Let's talk some more about truth, or so-called truth. Why? Because none of us have it. Many of us probably think we do. But then, if we have truth, how come millions of other people don't have our truth? Don't believe in what we believe, or know or think to be true? Doesn't make rational sense to think that you have the truth and nobody else does, or very few people. You see, there's this fable in the Bible about the Tower of Babel. Because of God's wrath, He ensured that every single person would speak a different language, and they would never understand each other. And that would prevent them from ever getting close to realizing what God was. Because in the Bible, that's the last thing God wanted anyone to discover. But what's the moral behind that? The Tower of Babel was supposed to be a real thing, where people in their audacity were building up a city like a wedding cake, in tears, going closer and closer to the heavens where God dwells. And God threw down fire and brimstone and destroyed it, and ensured that nobody would ever be able to communicate again with each other, to become so audacious. What? You could say, look, how preposterous is that? But then what you see these biblical writers did, they looked around as intelligent beings and they said, well, none of us speak the same language. Even if we have pretty close beliefs about something, there's always deviance or obscurities or differences. Who have you ever met that has the same belief system? How many times have you heard, which is a preposterous statement in itself, I don't believe everything that you say, I'm not in concurrence with everything that you say? Well, thank goodness, because that would mean that we'd all be drones, wouldn't it? Just rolled off the production line, battery operated, exactly the same programs. And so that's one indication that we might be human, and it might not be a simulation. But reputedly, human beings are supposed to have been in our present form on this planet for 1.5 million years. And yet we're still looking for truth. Go figure. Science, keep looking for this and looking for that and looking for this and looking for that. Whenever you listen, if you ever do, to these scientific debates, and all these scientists have got their theories. Very, very little proof of anything out there. It's all theory, speculation and hypothesis. And when asked, ultimately, if there's like 5 or 6 of these scientists from different strains of scientism, they're asked, well, you know, how confident are they in their hypothesis? Well, to be fair, well, that's it, that's all you ever get. Nobody ever goes, I'm actually 100%, we've found this and we know that. No, they speculate this and they hypothesize that, and that's where it ends, people. And so, with all these years we've been in this present form, and we're still looking for truth, and we still can't have a consensus. Why is it that we can't have consensus? If there is truth in the universe, why don't we intuitively, instinctively know it? Why are we all at odds with each other? It's a no-brainer to me. It just is so simple. It's so logical. If there was truth, then it'd be plain, and everybody would be it, see it, feel it, live it. But we don't. So it stands to reason that there isn't. We've all got our own subjective truths. And so it's very Tower of Babel-like, isn't it? 2,000 years ago they knew that there was no truth. And that's why they came up with that illustration. And then I asked the question, well, why is it so important to have truth? Insecurity. Why is it so important to have religions for some people to believe in? Why do you need to believe in something? That there's a Father and He loves you? It's because human beings are born with insecurity. Because there is no truth. If there was truth, you wouldn't be born with insecurity. Doesn't that make sense? You'd be born completely secure in your truth of where you came from, where you are, where you're going. It'll all be mapped out and we'd all be completely secure. We'd never need to speculate about anything if there was truth in the cosmos. And, of course, paradoxically, this is how it always works. The truth is, there is no truth. So we enter into a paradox, don't we? And that's how the universe is. It's a paradox. So even if you consider that you've found truth, then you'd just be in a paradox of truth. It just could never be, because there's always so many levels of contradiction to our so-called truths. Which just get us thinking, well, if it was true, then why is this being presented? Or why is that happening? And, all different sorts of things. And why isn't anything standard? Why doesn't everything stay the same? People could speculate that, there are things that stay the same because, scientists do these experiments, and no, they don't. They could say that they get a general consensus. But you see, what we always have to bear in mind, people, is that, if we look at science in its present state, and it's 100 years old, let's say, well, how many times have things changed within that short, tiny period and scale of events? You see, in philosophy, there's this sort of maxim. It's kind of like, well, look, just because the sun has risen, as far as we know, every single day of our lives, from east to west, what we call east to west, just concepts. But, let's just say we see the sun in the sky every day. Just because that has happened, it's no dead cert that it's going to continue to happen. And our own scientists speculate that one day it's not going to happen. And even tomorrow, even today, it could happen that, the Earth is shaken off its axis and doesn't spin anymore. So there doesn't have, the world doesn't have a rising of the sun anymore. It's like the moon, it just gets shone on from one side. Well, no, the moon doesn't actually get shone on one side because it goes around the sun the same as the Earth, but we see one side of the moon getting shone on by the sun. We never see the dark side, do we? And so I'm just bemused as to this whole thing about truth and how everybody likes to cling to it and everybody is desperately seeking for it. Why? I'm completely comfortable in there not being any truth. I'm completely comfortable that this is all Maya. It's just a dream, my own fantasy, my own godliness, dreaming of this human experience. I think that's what's going on. And all my experience, in all my different varying levels of consciousness, none of them have ever appeared to be any more real than the others. In actual fact, if I was really pressed, then I'd say, well, some of the DMT experiences are more real than this real. And so what do we make of that? When we have certain configurations of chemicals or electrical impulses, firings going on in the brain which tell us that an experience is more real than this one, and we took drugs to get there. How does that work? If we start to look seriously, people, at why we need truth, why we are looking for truth, doesn't it stand to reason Isn't it logically feasible that the reason why we're looking for truth is because we're insecure? Because if we were completely secure, then we wouldn't need to do that. We wouldn't need to speculate or bother about anything. And this is why they say that ignorance is bliss. Yeah, probably the most cosmically endowed people living on this planet today are the most stupid. The ones that don't ever think about these existential questions. They don't ever bother their pretty little minds with anything like that. They just get on with it, like drones, like primates, like animals, just operating from their instincts. When they're hungry they eat, when they're thirsty they drink, and all the rest of it. Ever asked so many questions about anything? Oh wow, oh now you've got me. Ooh, never thought about that. Of course they haven't. But are they more happy? Are they more content? And then when you've got people that just settle on a religion and I know there's a God and he loves me, well, what have they done? How do they know? Nobody's ever known it. Nobody's ever known him. It's not provable. Nobody's ever proved it. Nobody's ever even come close. Sure, there's been millions of people who have had subjective experiences, and if your subjective experience tells you that there's a God or this, that and the other, then fine. Then you can believe that, and you can bask in that, and you can enjoy that. You can take comfort from that. But you can't be projecting it onto the rest of the world, because they don't have your experience. And so what am I saying fundamentally in my videos? I'm always saying, people, that there is no truth. And this dimension, like all dimensions I think, isn't corporeal. It isn't real like people have been deluded to think it is. And I've explained it and explained it and explained it in the very simplest of terms. But nobody seems to register that. And, you know, I look on channels of very highly intelligent people. And I see that they've got millions of views and they've got thousands of comments. And I'm like, for instance, I was listening to Dark Horse podcast last night. One of the Weinstein brothers, Brett Weinstein, and he's interviewing Russell Brand about his new religious Christian conversion. Those two people were super intelligent, and they've got millions of views. Where are these people? Because in all fairness, I can't see any on my channel. And you could say, yeah, well, you're not super intelligent, you don't draw these sort of people. No, the things I've been saying have an equal value, and they are equally as intelligent as these people. Russell Brand is exceedingly articulate. That is for sure. And Brett Weinstein said, look, you're just super unique, you're one of a kind. I've never met anybody that can, you know, put things together like you do. He's gifted. Russell Brand is gifted. Genius. And yet, he has a belief, which he calls it faith. So it is a belief. Why doesn't he say, I know? I don't have faith. I have a knowing that there is a Jesus, there's a God, and he loves me, and all the rest of it. No. Even he in his genius doesn't say, I know. He says, I have faith. My faith tells me this and that. And he's sitting there in the interview with 2 crucifixes. Not only one, but 2. And then he's clutching and fondling his prayer beads. And he looks like some teenager that's got an infatuation with, like, you know, an older boy. Let's say a teenage girl, 16 years old, and she's got this infatuation with a 19-year-old boy. And it's all new and exciting. And you know, she's talking and all this, and he was speaking like that, all excited, and it's kind of like couldn't catch his breath, and talking so fast, and have the deep, in his excitement. And I look at that and I go, it looks very childish with this new invigorated thing to clutch to cling to, because how lost you've been in your life. And he has been lost, of course he is. He's still in recovery now after 18 years from a place he used to go for comfort. He hasn't said that he's cured. I'm cured now. I've got my wife and my children and my life and I'm completely happy. No, he doesn't say that. He says he's still in recovery. So therefore there's still a calling for him to go back to that. Why? Why is his core calling him back to that? That cuddle, that heroin cuddle. Because he hasn't found that in his life. He's still bereft of that. So now he's clutching at Jesus for that thing. Doesn't that sound feasible? Sounds perfectly feasible to me. And so if Russell Brand is the genius, and I'm seeing his flaw, well, doesn't that make me genius? I mean, what is it to be genius? If you can look at so-called genius people like Elon Musk, I mean, I'm sure, you know, many of us can break down Elon Musk's logic. He's supposed to be a super genius and the CEO of all these companies. Well, where do you find the time? I just don't believe it. I just don't believe it. Like David Icke says, these people are just front people. Because they're not doing all the thinking. They're not doing... Is Elon Musk a rocket scientist? No, he's not. And yet he's attributed with designing rockets. He hasn't designed no rockets. He hasn't designed no electric cars. He hasn't designed no tunnels, you know, to go under the cities and all this sort of thing. He hasn't done any designing, because if he was a designer, he would need to work, you know, for 18 hours every single day to do this stuff. But he doesn't. All of the people do it, all behind the scenes. And then he's the front man for this massive organisation behind him. He is not genius. If anything's genius, it's the human collective which is genius, because we all stand on the shoulders of others. Listen to Elon Musk. And you're just waiting for him to say something genius. That even is remotely genius. Nothing ever comes out that's remotely genius. So like David Icke says, look, people are put into positions like Bill Gates. Bill Gates apparently pilfered the technology that he created Windows with. That's out there, it's all documented. Pilfered it from IBM or something because they never patented something. And because Bill Gates came from an affluent family, had contacts, then all of a sudden, hey presto, these people in their genius, in their collective genius, saw an opportunity. Okay, then here's a guy who's prepared to run with this. Yeah, we'll let him run with that. We'll let him have the fame and notoriety of it. We're having all the money. You know? And so, okay, you know, Bill Gates has millions. What does that mean? You can only sleep in one bed at night. You can only drive in one car. You can only eat so much. What does it mean to be a trillionaire? It doesn't mean anything. There's nothing at all. And so, what Brett Weinstein said when he's speaking to Russell Brand, he said, look, because Brett Weinstein is a evolutionary biologist. He says, let me run this one by you. In all my life, I have become absolutely convinced that this thing that we're in, we call life, is evolutionary, biologically created. And it isn't any design, it's a self-generating evolutionary thing. And he says that I have no adherence or belief at all, because it sounds preposterous and unfeasible that a God created everything. So God must be very, very happy then for me to be an atheist. That's logic. That's logic, isn't it? If you are an atheist, and you are convinced with your own atheism, and you've got, you know, documents and data. Our minds work in data, in logic and reason. If they've been gifted by God, then surely God would tune us into believing in him and not believing in anything else. But he doesn't. Oh, that's free choice. Just how many instantiations do we need to see, you know, bullshit? You know, people worming out of reason and logic because that's God's will and all this shit. Look, what Brett says was very, very feasible. God must be ecstatic that I am a non-believer. Must be. And if that's the case, well, why are there believers and non-believers? If we're all God's children and God loves us all, why didn't he endow us all with the ability to see him, feel him, love him? He didn't. So, that means then that most of us are going to hell because we don't believe. Because the only portal into the afterlife is through believing in Jesus. So, billions of people on this planet aren't going into the afterlife and to be walking with Jesus. Does that sound fair? Does that sound like it's coming from the realm of a beautiful, benevolent God? No, it doesn't, does it? So what's more feasible? People get insecure. They have fantasies. They like the idea of Jesus because he's so nice. And then they just fall into it and they feel comfortable, and then they can fondle their beads and be all excited and wear the emblems of the Christ and talk about Christ, and it's pathetic. My stance, I hope you know by now, my stance on the whole Christian thing is that there is a feasibility for the Christos, for that certain something potentially in all human beings, that we can find some level of a deep and rich feeling within us when we eradicate all of the stuff that blocks us from feeling and experiencing that. When we get beyond the cerebral cortex, down into the deepest core levels of what we are as a human being, then that's the Christos. That's where God resides. That thing that we've never even come close to understanding, consciousness. In my estimation, consciousness has to be God. God and consciousness are interchangeable. We don't know anything about the essence of God. We don't know anything about the essence of consciousness. So it seems to me they're just two different words for the same thing. I'm going to post this video with Brett Weinstein and Russell Brand, and you can see two geniuses having a great conversation and seriously begging to differ. So where's truth? Two brilliant brains. You would have thought if brilliance meant anything at all, then they would have had both the same level of insight into that there's only one truth and it's God. But that hasn't happened. So how powerful is God, really? If that is his ultimate desire, and that's, you know, what Jesus was singing about, and what the Bibles and religions are all singing about, God, 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 our Saviour, you know, Lord, oh, pray and bow and beg and all that. Well, why do we need to pray, bow and beg? Why don't we just have it? Why aren't we just fed with this intuition that God loves us and God's created us and God's everywhere, and we all walk around, yeah, of course, God is indisputable. We don't, do we? So it seems to make more sense that if everybody isn't endowed with these thoughts and these securities, then why do we have so many other choices? Why do we have so many other leanings? Why are there reputedly 4,200 religions on the planet if there's only one God? That doesn't make sense, does it? None of it makes sense, people. What makes sense is that it's just fantasies of the individual, and we have a certain leaning towards one propensity or another. Another video I'm going to put up is a monologue from one of the greatest British philosophers, Bertrand Russell. And the video is about why I don't believe in Jesus. Or why I don't believe in God. Can't remember exactly. And he just goes through. And what he does in this video, reading excerpts from the Bible, he says that, well, look, Jesus is reputed by ignorant Christians to be all-loving. What is a Christian? The Bertrand Russell video. And then he read out stuff where Jesus was purposely cruel and demeaning and unloving and lacking benevolence and many instantiations like that. And for instance, he recites the parable or the instance of the olive tree. Jesus was hungry one day and he saw an olive tree with leaves, and so he went to the olive tree. But because it was out of season for olives to grow, Jesus condemned that olive tree, that it would never give birth to fruit again, and it died and withered. What sort of angry, thoughtless bullshit is that? It wasn't the time of year for the olive tree to bear fruit, but because Jesus was hungry and there wasn't any, and it's irrational to him to expect there to be, then he cursed the tree into dying. And there are many other instantiations of that, like the one where he casts out the devil or demons from somebody and throws them into pigs, and then the pigs run off the cliff down into the ocean. Well, why do that? Why not just cast the demons out, banish them, diminish them, obliterate them? Why take lives? Why cast them into innocent animals and have them smashed to pieces on rocks at the bottom of a cliff? There are many things like this that Jesus is reputed to have said, and we can read other sayings and things that Jesus was reputed to have said in other scriptures which are not in the Bible. And there are, I'm going to find it and I'll post it for you, stuff where when Jesus was a kid, he would kill birds with his eyes. He would inflict other people with death or pain and suffering because he could, or if there was a small disagreement or something like this. All these things that the benevolent Jesus was doing, he just sounded like a magician, gone feral. He was just wild, and he was just, cast a spell on you, cast a spell on you, and all these people going blind and deaf and dumb and dying and all this shit. So anyway, I'll post these videos, and any of you that are given to logic and reason, if you're, a silly ass Christian, then, I do everything in my power to get rid of numpties from this channel, people that can't think. I'll demean those people in any shape or form, because there's no point in them being here cluttering up the comment section with bullshit. I want intelligent comments, where you've thought about something, you've applied reason to it. And when I'm speaking about there is no material reality here, if you're going to contest it, then you have to at least have a deep and rich understanding of quantum physics and Buddhist philosophy and philosophy in general and human psychology and neurology and all these sort of things, because even our brain scientists, our neurologists will tell us that everything we feel and sense is all electricity in our brains. It's just electricity. And then that tells us we feel this and we think this and this, that and the other. And then our quantum physicists tell us that there's no physical matter here, and they've known that for over 100 years. They cannot find physical matter. And then the Buddhists have been telling us for thousands of years, it's all Maya, it's all delusion. And so I'm falling on all of these you know, deeply rooted philosophies and knowledge coming from science and stuff like that. I'm not just fantasizing about there is a God, there is a Jesus, and he loves me. You know, no, I want more. I need more. And so anybody that's just going to be condemning me, fuck off. Just fuck off this channel. You know? And that's why, one of the reasons why my channel will never really grow. Because people are too insecure. They're looking for their own beliefs to be concurred with. They're looking for a naive level of satiation, just floating around, and they're going to be, you know, hanging around channels which are going to be feeding them what they need for their security. My videos are always endeavouring to take your security away from you. And it's not a malicious thing, it's just that I think you're deluded. Anybody that's clinging on to so-called truth is deluded, because you haven't looked for truth. Because if you look for it, you'll find that there isn't any, because it just falls through your fingers. And okay, look, you know, this coffee cup's true, it's real. That's at a very, very silly egoic level. You've got to get outside of the ego. You've got to get out into the larger expanse of consciousness. And then you go into the realms of philosophy and spirituality and all those sort of different realms. And then this cup falls through your fingers because, you know, we call it a cup. Well, that's just a word. What is a cup? Take cup away. Then, oh, container. Take container away. What are you holding? Clay. Take clay away. So take clay, take cup, take container away. What are you holding? All of a sudden it starts to get murky, doesn't it? You know, what is actually going on? What is life if it's not just concepts, just inventions? What do these words mean, ultimately? Just other words. This is just an idea. This is just a Platonic idea. Life is just Platonic ideas. We've got ideas of life and the world, and we project that onto the blank screen of consciousness. And then that creates this thing. And every time somebody creates something and tells everybody about it, it comes into our consciousness with a new concept. We accept the concept, and that becomes our reality. That's the only reality of people, the concept of things. So, links down below anyway.